Welcome to the Hair Notes podcast. I am your host, Maxine Green, owner and master stylist of Curly Dimension Salon. This podcast was created intentionally to assist you on your natural hair journey. Each week we will cover topics on products, topics that you have questions about, that you need clarity about. So if you're looking for a space and a place to get some clarification on what's the next step in your natural hair journey, this is the place for you. Every week, a new episode will drop. So grab a notepad and a pen and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back into another episode of the Hair Notes podcast. I'm your host, Maxine Green. And on today's episode, I want to talk to you about why my curls are not reverting immediately back after a silk press. So I thought it was fitting because I'm rocking a silk press, as you can see. Now, I'm a natural curly girl and I chose to silk out my hair today or just for a couple of days because I wanted some versatility. That's the beautiful thing about being a curly girl. You have the option to wear your hair curly, naturally curly if you choose to, or you can wear your hair silked out. And by silking out, I mean a pressed out or where you're using the flat iron. So often, so many curly girls come into the salon and sometimes they're new clients or they're old clients. And they will come in and they're asking me, okay, so I just had one silk press. Why is my hair not reverting back to my curls? So oftentimes what I find is not too much heat has been applied to their curly hair, right? So I think that what I find is that most stylists, oftentimes with natural hair, they think that they need to use a substantial amount of heat in order to have or to straighten a curly girl's hair. So the thing about that is, what I find is that when you don't know and you don't understand textured hair, you oftentimes use too much of something or too many products or too much heat simply just to achieve a look, right? So let me elaborate what I mean by that. What I'm finding with curly girls who come in as a first-time client to me and they want to have their hair or they want to rock their hair naturally curly, they're already natural, but now they have heat damage and they are so concerned as to why their hair won't revert back or why their curls won't come back. Again, too much heat has been applied. The thing about natural curly hair, you have to look at the texture. If you are a natural curly girl whose texture is really soft, and by that I mean, if it's really easy for you to get your hair straight, then a lot of heat is not required to get your hair straight, right? So what I find is a lot of curly girls, they think that their hair is so coarse, or they go to a salon to have a service done like a silk press or a thermal press or a flat iron. Those are the terminology that we all call it, right? Or you're familiar with. They think that they need a lot of heat in order for it to look silky or smooth, when essentially that's quite the opposite. A couple of things that I want you to keep in mind is, what is your texture? Where are you in terms of what your texture looks like? And now, if you are a naturally curly girl and you've already in the process or already been taking care of your hair, meaning you're already using the right products, then your hair should be simply super easy for you to transition to straight. You don't need, or it's not required to have a substantial amount of heat applied to your hair. I find that going over one piece of hair or one section of your head in order to get it silky smooth too many times will often then turn into heat damage. And or let's say, for instance, you get your hair done today or you get your silk press done today, and then you go home, and because the human eye instantly gravitates to what we see in front of us, so we always want to make sure that our hair is polished. We always want to make sure that we have a finished and polished look. So oftentimes what I find is curly girls will go over the front area of their hair repeatedly just to give that sleek look, or they'll go over the back of their hair, right? Because we see in the front, we can't see so much in the middle of the hair, and we pay a lot more attention to, we pay a lot more attention to the back of the head, right? So those areas are the areas that are going to be more compromised. And let's just say, or you wear extensions and you do a leave out, right? Which I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But I think I want you to really understand what your texture is and where you're starting. So if you know what your texture is, or you going to a stylist, let's say you're not someone who is doing your hair repeatedly and you're going to the salon to have it professionally done, then really, if you know your hair, let's say you are really taking the time to manage your hair at home, which I encourage most curly girls to do, right? I'm a believer in DIY. If you are armed with enough tools and you have enough knowledge of what to do and what not to do in order to maintain healthy curly hair, then I believe that you can maintain your hair at home without having the extra strain of, oh my God, what is my hair going to do, right? Some simple, very easy to do steps that you can do to maintain your hair at home. You shouldn't have an issue with heat damage if you are aware of where your starting point is, meaning if you're aware of what your texture looks like and what it's capable of doing. So when you understand what your texture, the fabric of your hair, how will your hair respond to heat, too much heat or not enough heat, when you know that information, then the problem of you having, or the issue of you having heat damage will be non-existent. So let's say you go to a professional, because most curly girls do. They seek guidance from a professional, or they'll get the information off of YouTube. And there's nothing wrong with YouTube University. Just be mindful of the information that you're getting and really pick and choose what you extract from those videos, just so you know that you are not putting too much into your hair, right? So let's say you go to a salon professional and you get a silk press or a thermal press or a flat iron. It's all the same thing, the same terminology, different terminologies. It means the same thing. So I don't want you to be confused as to, okay, what am I talking about, right? So thermal press, a silk press, or a flat iron, all the same thing. It means the same thing across the board. It's just a matter of technique and what's being used. That's the easy part, right? Once you go to a salon and you sit in the stylist chair and you express that you would like a silk press, be mindful and be open and just express to the stylist that, look, I would love a silk press. I have a function to attend, or I just need something a little bit different this time, right? But I don't want too much heat applied to my hair, right? Or you can simply say, my hair don't require too much heat because my hair gets straight very quickly. Not all, some stylists who are very much aware of what a textured hair, how well a textured hair responds to heat, will then know that not too much heat needs to be applied to this particular curly girl, right? So a couple of factors that I want you guys to really consider when you're getting your thermal press or your silk press or a flat iron. Make sure that you know like where you are. Like, is your hair fine? Is it medium? Is it coarse? How soft are your curls, right? Is your curl super tight? Is your curls super loose? Do you already have damage from chemical processing, right? Overly processed hair, meaning that you've colored it one too many times and you have some kind of residual from that, right? And or you have like product buildup or whatever you had going on prior to this particular service or this day that you're getting the service done, right? You want to be mindful of those things before you proceed, because then that's going to determine the end result, right? It determines how your hair responds to heat, because if you have too much heat applied to your soft textured, your curls, right? What's going to end up happening is your curls are going to now stretched. It's going to get loose, and or you can experience heat damage altogether. That is only if you guys are repeatedly pressing out the same area, or you go home and you decide to touch up the front a little bit, touch up the back a little bit to make it look presentable or decent. Because when you, as a curly girl, and I do understand, when you have a silk press, you want to stay away from the moisture, right? So our curls tend to revert back the minute a little moisture or there's a little humidity in the atmosphere. So our hair tends to revert back a little bit. So I completely understand that we want to keep this polished look, right? We want to keep the look for a little longer than usual. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with wanting to touch up certain areas or certain parts of your style. There's nothing wrong with that. But just be mindful of how often you're touching up that area, how much heat, right? The volume or the temperature level of your flat iron that you're using to touch up that hair or to retouch the hair. So really be mindful of those things, because those are things that's going to make the difference in whether or not you get heat damage. Now, I have the curly girl who will come in and she will say, well, my hair is not reverting back at all. So then I often wonder what was used. I often ask, did you notice like anything different? Did you use anything else? Did you get a softener, and by a softener, I mean not a complete texturizer, but a softener to loosen the curl pattern of your hair to make it a little bit more manageable, right? Some curly girls have never heard of that service. Some curly girls have. Some curly girls do get it, right? I personally don't like texturizers. I personally don't agree for a curly girl to get a texturizer, but that's another topic or for another day, right? But for now, I really want you to be mindful of why your hair is not reverting back after a silk press. There's a few factors involved, right? And the first thing is too much heat was applied, and or if the stylist already gave you a polished look and then you go home and maybe 2 days into it, there's a little bit of moisture in the atmosphere, or your hair gets a little damp from the shower, and or you were working out. Because curly girls, let's face it, when we have a silk press, exercise days are non-existent, because if we sweat too much, that's it. That's the end of the hairstyle, right? So to avoid all that, I recommend that when you are thinking of getting a silk press, be mindful of your schedule, be mindful of what your texture looks like, right? Keep those factors in mind, and really voice or be vocal to your stylist that you don't want too much heat applied, because you are concerned about the reversion, right? You're concerned about your curls reverting back to where they were. Now, here's the other thing, you guys. I know too often a silk press, it's beautiful, right? I love a good silk press. It just makes you look and feel different, right, than the norm, which is our curls, which, don't get me wrong, I love my curly hair, but sometimes I like to switch it up a bit, right? I love to come home and my husband looks at me and he's like, oh, I got a new wife today, right? How many of us don't like a new wife, right? We don't like a new look, right? Because it keeps things guessing, right? It keeps people guessing. Okay, what is she going to wear today? How is she going to wear her hair today, right? Those are all good points, and those are all good things, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm like the other girl. I love a good versatility in my hairstyle, but I'm very mindful. Like, I am not repeating touching up a particular area just to keep the hairstyle polished. So a couple of things I want to tell you guys, or I want to offer a couple of offerings I want to give you guys when you have a silk press, to avoid having loose curl pattern, to avoid having your curls not revert back to where they were. Wear your silk press for about a week, right? Wear your silk press for about a week after you've come from the salon. Wear it for a week. Start to wrap your hair every night. Now, if you don't know how to wrap your hair, ask your stylist, ask someone else to show you how to wrap your hair, and or you can pin curl it to kind of preserve the style. right? The less you do to the hair, the better it is for you. And that will help reduce any kind of heat damage, because then you won't be so prone or apt to silk it out, right? Or to touch it up. So again, just wrap your hair. You can wrap it for a couple of days, or you can pin curl it. Now, if you're not familiar, if not you're not a hair person and you just simply can't wrap it, right? And I do mean like a doobie wrap, like I hope you guys I hope you know what a doobie wrap is. I mean, I'm kind of aging myself by saying doobie, but it's an old school name for just a wrap, right? So you wrap your hair and you wear your silk scarf at night, and or you can simply pin curl it to keep it. Not only will you give yourself bounce or give the hair some volume and bounce, but you can also preserve your silk press a little longer than normal, right? My goal for you is not to keep retouching, or not to keep touching over your hair, repeatedly touching your hair with the flat iron, right? Because what I find is curly girls tend to have the flat iron at maximum heat, which is about 450, 480. They have it at maximum heat. And so when you're doing that, if you can reduce your heat, even if you have to retouch, just reduce the heat a little bit. You can put it at 275. You can put it at 375. You can put it at 350. You don't, because the hair is already straight to begin with. So you shouldn't need a high temperature to retouch a particular area or to retouch your hair. So really, really think about where your starting point is. Look at your curls. How does your curls fall before you got your silk press? And then how will they fall after you've gotten your silk press, right? So you want to really think about, okay, I don't want my hair to be stretched too much. The other part of that is, and I know you guys love your silk press. I do, as I mentioned earlier, I really do I love a good silk press, but don't get it as frequently. Don't do it so often. I know a lot of curly girls who they get caught up in this, I'm natural, but I want to wear a silk press. Yeah, about that. And then like 6 months into a silk press, they want their hair back curly. But at that point, they have severe heat damage. The consistent application of heat to one spot or to one area or to your hair is going to loosen your curl pattern. So when you look at your curls and you're wondering why my curls are not reverting, you have to think about, how much heat did I apply? Then what did I do at home to keep up this particular style, right? And or if you didn't touch your hair, or if you're not a hair person and you said, I can't even do my hair, so I wouldn't even think to retouch it. I simply went back to the salon. Then you want to think about, okay, where were your curls? How loose, how tight, you know what I mean? How was your curl pattern prior to the silk press? Because if your curl patterns are really loose, you don't require a lot of heat. Now, I understand for my medium to coarse curly girls may require a little bit more heat to kind of smooth it out a little bit more. And by a little more, I mean maybe an extra pass, not just one. And by extra pass, you're going over a particular section or each strand or each section, each inch and a half of hair, or each quarter of a slice of a hair, right? You're going over it maybe twice just to smooth it down. But here's the thing. Stylist knows that application is key. Stylist knows that product choices are keys. So stylist knows how to do the proper way to do a silk press. So if a silk press is done properly and with care, with the right products, the issue of having heat damage should never come up, or would never arise, right? So as a curly girl, I want you to be very mindful. Be very vocal as well when you sit in your stylist chair. Really express to them that this is for an occasion, or I simply want something new. I don't want my curls to go away. I would love for my curls to revert back after I wash my hair. Now, the other thing that I find that curly girls are experiencing is there's a smell to their hair after a silk press. Now, a silk press could have been done once, and there's a smell to it. The smell almost smells like it's a little burnt. That's because it's too much heat been applied, right? So when you smell that smell, it's too much heat that's been applied in the initial application of that service. So you always want to be mindful and be very vocal. You have to advocate for yourself when you are sitting in the stylist chair. So I can share my experience with my clients. I have quite a few clients who swing back and forth, meaning they can wear it curly and or straight, and the clients love it. But what I express to the clients and how I treat my clients is I'm only going over that hair once. Application is crucial when you are doing any service on a natural curly girl, because we tend to be a lot more dehydrated and we a lot more drier. We want to be very, very mindful. So application is key, right? Product usage is key, essential, as well as how we execute that hairstyle. So one pass over that curly girl, one pass, and she sees it. Yes, I will blow dry the hair. Yes, I will go through with the flat iron. If I need to do a trim, yes, we will do a trim or trim up the ends to make the hair look more polished, right? And more uniform or cohesive, if you will, right? So yes, those are things that I think about. But before I do any of that, there has been a heat protectant applied to the hair. The hair was properly prepped at the shampoo bowl. So before the client gets to the styling chair, her hair is already ready and prepared to receive that heat. And I'm not using a substantial amount, or I'm not using a flat iron or tool with high heat. Typically, my temperature of my blow dryer is very low. The temperature of anything that I'm using, I keep them at a minimum. The flat iron, I know my flat iron goes up to 450. I tend to keep it around 410 because I can still get the same results because I know what I'm doing. All right, so I tend to get the same results, but I'm not putting too much heat on the hair. So you guys, I really thought about with the clients. I've seen so many curly girls come in and they're really concerned about their hair ultimately reverting right back after a silk press. There's nothing wrong with getting silk press. You got to be mindful of how frequently you're getting them. You have to be mindful of your texture, how tight, coily, loose, what your pattern is, right? Are you medium? Are you fine? Are you coarse? That determines how quickly your hair gets straight, right? And then your temperature of your tools, the temperature of the dryer, of the blow dryer, the temperature of the flat iron. So those are things that you want to be mindful in order for you to have good results, or in order for you to see the results that you desire, right? So all right, you guys, I know this was a lot, right? I know this was a lot, but this has been a topic that came up a couple of times in the salon, and I wanted to really talk to you about that. So I do hope that this helped you. I do hope that this makes it a little bit clearer for you and what you can do to prevent heat damage or to prevent looser curls, right? Do not apply too much heat. And you don't need to repeat the flat iron. You don't need to repeat touching up your area, certain parts of your hair or your head just to keep it polished. Rock your hair in a doobie, right? In a wrap and or pin curl it to preserve the style. All right, you guys, I know it's been a lot, and hope you guys you get some value from this episode. So until the next one, I will catch you on the next one, you guys. Have a blessed week, y'all.